Everyone, my name is Danielle Chupka. Today we are starting the first webinar in our Risk and Claims Team Educational Series. We're going to be talking about Cal OSHA and how your business can work towards compliance. Rob here is the Director of Risk and Claims. He is going to be our moderator today and will be helping with the questions at the end of the slideshow. If you see in the chat, we are recording this webinar, and if you have any questions or if you would like the slides for the webinar today, please email rac@levitt.com. That's RAC at levitt.com. We're going to have some time for Q&A at the end, hopefully about 15 to 20 minutes. So please put in as many questions as you can, and we will answer as many as time allows. Okay, so a little bit of a disclaimer before we get started. This webinar is provided by Levitt United's Insurance Services for informational purposes only and does not constitute legal, tax, or professional advice. Every business has unique circumstances, so please consult qualified legal counsel for advice specific to your situation. Levitt United Insurance Services assumes no liability for any actions taken based on the information shared in this session. A little bit about me today. My name is Danielle Chupka. I'm the risk manager here at Levitt United. I am a graduate safety practitioner by the Board of Safety Certified Professionals. I also have an associate in risk management from the Institutes, and I got started in safety because I went to school at Sacramento State and got a bachelor's of science in occupational health and safety. Okay, so what are we going to talk about today? We're going to start with a little bit of information about why you should care about Cal OSHA regulations, meeting compliance, and keeping a safe workplace. We'll talk about the basics of Cal OSHA, some of the differences between Cal OSHA and federal OSHA. We're going to talk about your responsibilities as an employer. We are also going to touch on inspections and enforcement, talk about some of the common citations and costs of penalties. And then we're going to end with resources and support. I put a lot of information in this webinar, so some of these things we're not going to go very deep into. It's going to be pretty surface level, but my hope is that by the end of this, you'll have a good understanding of where to go, where to look for more information, and understand that you have support here at Levitt United. You have support by your insurance carrier as well as Cal OSHA consultation as well. Okay, so why should you care? Other than, yes, it's the law. We know that it's required. Cal OSHA, puts all these rules out there. Why should you follow those rules? For one, when it comes to your insurance carriers are asking for your Cal OSHA required written programs. Some of you may have had, loss control come out where they're asking you, do you have an IIPP? Do you have a heat illness prevention program? And if you don't have it, then you can, they usually recommend that you have it. I see we have a hand raised. If it's okay, do you mind putting your question or comment either in the chat or under the Q&A, and then we'll get to you at the end if that's okay. Sorry about that. Let me get back on my train of thought. So your carriers are trying to make sure that you are meeting some of those basic requirements, not only because it's the law and it's required, but also because having these programs and following the rules of Cal OSHA often coincide with reduced injuries, illnesses, and preventing accidents at your workplace. Another reason to realize kind of the implications of what can happen if you're not compliant is that Cal OSHA citations are public record. So not only are you going to get a fine, but you also have the potential for, uh, customers, uh, if you're working with contractors, if you're working with, different vendors and other companies, they can easily go on, the OSHA establishment search, type in your name, and look at, any of the OSHA citations that you've had in the last 5 years. This is also something that underwriters will do when they are looking at, at your account as an overall risk, and they see, oh, well, they have, 3 or 4 OSHA citations. Um, Most of the times they'll ask for more information, how you responded to them, but it could be a potential to, for them to say, oh, maybe we're going to pass this year, or that kind of thing. It also impacts your liability. So, of course, you have liability with your workers and your workers' compensation, but it also can affect your general liability policies and your property policies, because if an accident were to happen, your safety program is going to be under scrutiny. When was the last time that, your fire extinguishers were serviced if a fire occurred? And what would happen if, God forbid, somebody from the public or a customer or a visitor were injured, and, they are asking for different documentation of what you've been doing to prevent fires in your workplace. And, oh, well, we do it, but we don't have documentation, or we, maybe it's something that isn't regularly done, that could put you in a sticky situation. Also, a strong safety climate has a major positive impact on employee engagement, job satisfaction, retention, and morale. If you, as a employer, are showing your employees that their safety is a priority for you, it will then make your employees feel more engaged, they'll be more satisfied, and um, they'll be more likely to feel happy with their own job. So there's lots of different studies on that if you want to look into it. Um, but at the very end of the day, why you should care about Cal OSHA and their regulations is that though their intention is to keep workers safe and healthy. Most regulations have been written because somebody was injured by, whatever happened. Heat illness prevention was created because workers have died or have gotten seriously ill from heat. And so um, they don't usually write regulations just to write regulations. They write regulations to prevent accidents from reoccurring. A little bit about Cal OSHA itself. So it was established in 1973. It covers almost all workers in California, including state and local government workers. Some exceptions include federal employees, or offshore maritime workers. Those are either covered by federal OSHA, or other entities. Um, so we have the California Department of Industrial Relations is the umbrella, and under that umbrella you have the two main branches, which are Cal OSHA and the stand or the DIR boards. Cal OSHA has the consultation unit, the compliance unit, and the Bureau of Investigation and Legal unit. So consultation is meant to educate employers, provide resources, provide support. They will come out to your business for free, and help you with getting closer to compliance. As I'll say, nobody will give you a stamp of approval saying you are 100% compliant, but they will work with you to say, okay, if you have this program, if you're doing this, you're checking the boxes that Cal OSHA is looking for. And as long as that system's working, then that means you're in compliance. But you have to make sure it's a system that's working for you. The compliance unit, so that is Cal OSHA enforcement, they are completely separate from consultation. So anything you tell consultation is confidential. It does not get sent to enforcement, with the exception that if it is something that is very hazardous and could cause a serious injury or death, they will give you a recommendation. If you don't comply with that recommendation, there is a chance that they could involve enforcement, and that they'll make sure to give you plenty of opportunities to correct it within a timely manner. The Bureau of Investigations and Legal Unit, these are going to be the people that are looking at the criminal side of Cal OSHA. So whereas compliance is giving you fines, citations, penalties, the BOI and legal unit has the potential to prosecute negligent employers and or supervisors, in the event that somebody is very seriously injured or killed in a fatality. They have the ability to refer cases to the DA for criminal prosecution. So that's something that is quite scary, but you would have to be quite negligent and really not be intentionally not following the rules, for something like that to happen. But it is a possibility. The DIR boards, we have the Occupational Safety and Health Appeals Board. This is the board that you would go to if you got a Cal OSHA citation from the enforcement unit and you want to challenge that in an appeals court. So either trying to reduce the fine or reduce the severity, or probably try to get it away completely as well. The Occupational Safety and Health Standards Board. This is the board that works on creating new Cal OSHA regulations as well as updating Cal OSHA regulations, based on political pressure or incidents that they're seeing either through consultation or compliance, as well as keeping up with federal OSHA standards. Okay, so a little bit of a difference between federal OSHA and Cal OSHA. So Cal OSHA operates its own OSHA program with regulations that are as strict or stricter than federal OSHA standards. So when I just talked about this, the Occupational Health and Safety Standards Board, they are making sure that if there's a new federal OSHA standard, that Cal OSHA has a regulation that is just as strict or stricter than that new standard. So they often are, trying to keep up with changes, although there haven't been very much with federal OSHA. Cal OSHA has been quite busy within that standards board creating new regulations. The difference between the federal versus California regulations, is going to be the way that they are titled. So OSHA standards, which are federal OSHA, they're usually just says, OSHA by itself. They're under Title IX of the Code of Federal Regulations. These are some of the sections that you'll find them under. Cal OSHA is under Title VIII of the California Code of Regulations, and they have sections anywhere from 329 to 8618. The reason why I wanted to list this is often if you type into Google, Cal OSHA regulation on heat illness, you may not have things, and I'm sorry, heat illness was not a good example, but if you were to type in Cal OSHA regulation on lockout tagout, you might get information that pops up in that search engine that is both from OSHA and from Cal OSHA. So it's very important to pay attention to the website that it's coming from, as well as the way that regulation is listed, because you'll be able to tell which standards it's coming from. And sometimes that Cal OSHA standard is just a little bit more different, that you want to make sure you are following Cal OSHA and not following those federal regulations. Some of the California specific regulations, as I sort of misspoke a second ago, the heat illness prevention program is a California specific standard. The federal OSHA program has been working on trying to create a heat illness prevention program, but at this time, that is a regulation that Cal OSHA has created on their own, in order to kind of keep up with best standards and really protect workers. Um, with the injury and illness prevention program, this is also California specific. It requires you to have that written program. It's also kind of used as a catch-all. So if you were to get a Cal OSHA citation, sometimes there's not a regulation that specifically covers that hazard or issue that happened. And so instead of, them not giving you any citation at all, they will cite the IIPP saying that you didn't recognize that specific thing as a hazard within your business, which contributed to an injury. Federal OSHA has something a little bit similar, which is called the general duty clause, where they just have a broad statement that says all employers must have a workplace that is safe and free from hazards, or something along the lines of that, to where if there's not a federal OSHA regulation, they will use that, for hazards that aren't specifically covered. Employer responsibilities. So the main thing as an employer is to provide employees with a safe working environment. And how do we do that, right? So one is knowing the hazards of your business, doing inspections, identifying hazards, and then, taking those hazards and finding ways to reduce them or protect your employees from those hazards. Know what regulations apply to your business. You need to know what kind of written plans you need, what kind of documentation need, and how to comply with those things. And making sure that your employees and supervisors also understand what is required as well. You want to know how to integrate those regulations into your business. So making sure that you are communicating, hazards with your employees, with your supervisors, and then training employees and supervisors on how to stay safe, or to reduce those hazards. And then also knowing what's causing injuries at your workplace, making sure that you are investigating accidents and correcting hazards. Um, if you look at some of these things: inspections, hazard identification, documentation, compliance, communication, training, accident investigation, correcting hazards, all of those are listed as sections in your IIPP. So it's a written program, but it is a process that's implemented in your business that you're consistently working at. One thing to know is that saying that you didn't know or you weren't aware of requirements for you as an employer cannot be used as an offense as a defense in a Cal OSHA investigation. And it typically could result in them saying that you're being negligent, because you as an employer, as the authority, are expected to know these things. So written program requirements. A written safety program, is a workplace policy that talks about the responsibilities, the roles, uh, how you're going to do things, how you're going to do inspections, those kinds of things, how you're going to provide training, how you're going to make sure employees comply with these specific things. So some of the Cal OSHA required programs that apply across many industries, is the injury and illness prevention program. This is required for every employer with one or more employees. So I think it's safe to say that, as long as you're in California, you're required to have an IIPP. Also having an emergency action plan and fire prevention program. That is, talking about what are you going to do in the case of a fire? What are you going to do in the case of an earthquake or a flood? How are you responding? How are you making sure employees can evacuate safety or shelter in place safely? How are you making sure that fire is prevented within your workplace, whether or not you are working with things that are highly flammable? Hazard communication program. So this is chemical safety, talking about, the different ways that chemicals can harm people, either if it's an inhalation or if it's irritating to the skin, if it could cause injury to somebody's eyes. I think people maybe can misconstrue this as, super hazardous chemicals like battery acid or, you know, things that are very, very harmful, but simple chemicals just like bleach or acetone can also be really harmful and are required if you are will require you to have a hazard communication program. Um, Workplace violence prevention plan. This is a newer requirement that started last year, but all businesses with 10 or more employees, or with any number of employees, if they're accessible to the public, must have a workplace violence prevention plan. Some of the other ones, heat illness prevention plan. This is applying to indoor and outdoor workers now. So that's a newer standard. You also have the wildfire smoke prevention plan. That's if you have workers that are working outdoors when there is a forest fire nearby. Confined space entry, respiratory protection, and hearing conservation are a couple other ones as well that may or may not apply to your business. Workplace postings and record keeping. So when you have those big safety posters on your walls, some of these also include your the safety and health protections on the job. So if you look at that workplace posting, you'll see where it lists information about Cal OSHA for your employees, lists how they can contact Cal OSHA offices. That's all required to have up. It's kind of that open transparency, saying that you as an employer have this responsibility, and employees can do have the ability to report if something's unsafe within your business. Emergency phone numbers, if you're in construction, you want to make sure that those are listed and posted at all of your sites. And you also want to make sure that the employees have access to medical and exposure records if you're using hazardous or toxic substances. There are lists and information on what is considered a hazardous or toxic substance if you're interested. Record keeping. So keeping records of injuries and illnesses within your workplace. So everyone should be doing incident reports after an injury happens, the who, what, why, when, and where happened. If there's anything that could help prevent that injury from happening in the future that should be implemented, make sure that's documented, as well as making sure to document when that correction was made. The OSHA 300 logs. So we have, not every business is required to do these every year, but at the end of every year, some businesses are required to list all of their injuries on these logs. And that would be the OSHA 300. The 300A is the summary. So your 300 is an internal document that you're keeping, it within employee records and information. The 300A is required to be filled out based on that 300 information, and that's posted for employees to see between February and April of each year, of the following year. 301 logs, that is your incident report. So there you can use other logs to or reports to fill out those incident reports. You just want to make sure that all the information that's on that 300 log is also on an incident report. If you're filling out the DWC1 forms, I may be saying the wrong form possibly, but if you're filling out the ones that you are required to send into your carrier, that usually has the same amount of information on those logs. um, Again, those exposure records, those you want to keep. Inspections and hazard corrections. You want to make sure that if you're doing inspections of your workplace, you have your checklists and you're doing that, every month or something. Um, or if you're doing that on the job site, either, weekly or daily or whatever it is based on your hazards, make sure they're documented, write them down. And then if you have hazards listed on that inspection, write down when it's been corrected. That way you have, a paper trail of the things that you're proactively doing to keep your workplace safe. Same with trainings. You want to make sure that you are getting sign-in sheets from your employees, or if you're using an electronic system, that's great too. You want to make sure that you keep records of the training material that you're used, and then any quizzes if you end up doing that. The last little bit on this is that if you have less than 10 employees, you have a lot less record keeping requirements when it comes to Cal OSHA. But it's always recommended to have that information. For one, if you end up going from 10 employees, or yeah, 10 employees to 11 employees, then all of a sudden you have all these additional record keeping requirements to all of a sudden implement. Whereas if you're kind of doing it already, you're not going to have to worry about that. If you don't plan on having any more than, 10 employees, then still I would still consider it, just because it will it's a good way to keep record of what you're doing, and that way if there were to be any sort of investigation, you're going above and beyond what's required, and often helps you look better. Okay, so training requirements. We talked a bit about training. This page here looks a little funky. I think the formatting got a bit off. So this page here is actually a Cal OSHA web page that, if we have time at the end, I'll click and we'll show you. But otherwise, the link is here as well. So this actually will give you information on what kind of training is required. It'll give you the specific Cal OSHA regulation, which will sometimes list some of the different topics on that specific hazard or training that need to be covered during the training. It'll show you who needs that training to be done, and then it'll give you some additional information on what you can use, because sometimes, for heat illness they might have training that you can directly use from Cal OSHA to provide to your employees or provide to your supervisors. One of the things here is that, like, as you can see here, this frequency of training, and I know you guys can't see this very well, but it says just because refresher training is not required, doesn't mean you shouldn't provide refresher training. So, um, for example, the emergency action plan, when the Cal OSHA requirements on this is that, you only have to, when your employee very first starts at your business, train them on the emergency evacuation routes and all of that. But then imagine that you have an employee that works for you for 5 or 10 years. Nothing within your business changes, but you guys haven't gone through your emergency evacuation plan since that employee started 10 years ago. Is that going to prepare them to be able to get out as quickly and safely as possible? Probably not. So just keep that in mind when you're looking at these things. Maybe it's not something that you do annually, but maybe you do it every other year, or um, just whatever frequency feels necessary based on that hazard. Okay, so Cal OSHA enforcement. So there are two different main types of inspections. You have the unprogrammed inspections as well as the programmed inspections. So unprogrammed aren't, pre-planned inspections. They're coming out because of an accident or fatality. They're coming out because somebody complained, either your employee, somebody you're working with, or even possibly I have heard that there are some competitors who are calling, kind of not the nicest thing to do, but partially because they feel if they have to follow these rules, they want everyone within their industry to follow these rules. So they're starting to complain about other businesses within their industry. There are referral inspections. So if another state agency were to come out, sometimes if they see issues, they may refer that issue over to Cal OSHA, and that would be a reason for inspections, as well as follow-up inspections. So maybe Cal OSHA came out for an accident, they might come back out next year as a follow-up just to maybe take a deeper dive on what's going on within your business. Um, Programmed inspections, those are going to be the targeted inspections. So typically it's things like heat illness. They're looking at employees in certain industries that have high injury rates. As you can see over on the other side here under the triggers for Cal OSHA inspection, um, targeted inspections are going to be on the high hazard list. So if you are big enough to be experience rated, and have an X mod, if your X mod is 1.25 or over, you have the potential to get on that Cal OSHA high hazard list. So yeah, so those triggers are going to be if there's an imminent hazard that either comes either by a complaint, a referral, or even every once in a while, a Cal OSHA enforcement officer is driving past your job site, or that sees something on the outside of your business and will stop and do an inspection right then and there. Fatalities and catastrophes, this is a very high priority for Cal OSHA. They will be out as soon as possible. Serious injuries and exposures will also, when you report those, that can sometimes trigger a Cal OSHA inspection. Um, and again, those referrals, targeted inspections, and follow-up inspections. And you will not get notification that they are coming before an inspection. Um, Going to go through this a little bit quickly, mainly because this is a subject that you could get a lot of preparation for. I will say there are a lot of legal webinars and things like that that are very helpful to watch and go through. Some of those labor attorneys can have some really good tips and tricks for handling Cal OSHA inspections. But for one, have a designated representative for an inspection. If somebody walks into the front of your business and talks to reception, do they know to call your general manager, or do they know to call your operations manager? Whoever you have designated is going to be the person who's meeting. That way, you don't just have somebody who isn't trained or isn't prepared for that investigation walking Cal OSHA through your business. So you can often just have them sit aside and wait. Just don't make them wait too long, but have them wait for somebody to come and receive them. Um, Make sure that you have your written safety programs current and accessible so that you're not having to dig through files, that have been sitting in the back of a closet or something like that. Know where they are, and make sure that they're updated as regularly as possible. Fix any hazards as quickly as possible. So, if you have that few minutes, make sure that you're kind of going to the back and saying, "Hey guys, make sure your PPE is on. Clean up anything that needs to be cleaned up. Kalish is going to be walking through. Preserve any items involved in an accident. So if Kalish is coming out to investigate an accident, don't throw that broken piece of equipment away. Take it out of use, get it, keep keep it away from employees, but don't destroy it, don't get rid of it. Just put it, away from people being able to access it. As well as like if you need to block off certain areas of your workplace if you can't move that piece of equipment or machinery. You want to remind employees of their training. So, say, hey, these are the trainings that we've talked about in the last few months. Remember that if you guys were to be interviewed by the Cal OSHA inspector, and also inform them of their interview rights. So, there are some good resources online about employees' rights as well as supervisors' rights. When Cal OSHA is interviewing them, they are allowed to say that they do not want to be interviewed. Document the inspection, take notes, photos. If the Cal OSHA inspector is taking a picture, you should be taking a picture and take it from a couple different angles. Um, Again, notify everyone that Cal OSHA is there. That way, people can hopefully be extra careful when it comes to working that day. And then mainly be professional and cooperative. It really goes a long way. The same way that, if a police officer were to be pulled to pull you over for a ticket, your attitude can very much impact the way that the enforcement officer may handle your situation. Okay, citation types and maximum penalties. So you have various types of violations. You have general and regulatory. Those max penalties are $16,000. Sometimes they're as little as $250. And it just depends, is it just a paperwork thing or did somebody get injured and, something else? Serious violations have to do with a serious hazard that could either cause serious injury or a fatality. It doesn't necessarily mean that that hazard has already caused a serious violation, or sorry, a serious injury or fatality. Repeats, so anytime that you get any of these violations, if Cal OSHA were to come back out within the next 5 years and that is still an issue, you have the potential to receive a repeat violation. And willful violations often involve negligence. These two links are great. So you can actually look up OSHA inspection data by industry. So you could type in your own industry and select California and kind of look at some of the different violations that other employers within your industry are receiving. Kind of gives you an idea of, are we doing that? And maybe we should be following this regulation. Also, the OSHA establishment search. You can search your own business on this establishment search, and this is the website that is public access where anyone could find that information. The top 10 Cal OSHA citations. I'm going to run through this really quickly because I do want to make sure we have plenty of time uh, for questions. So I'm going to try and finish up in the next few minutes here. So we have the injury and illness prevention program for general industry and construction. So that's the number one and the number three. Heat illness prevention for outdoor places of employment. Number four, we're going to touch on in the next two slides, reporting fatalities and serious injuries. Hazardous communication, that's that chemical safety component. If you drop down here, this kind of coincides with that too, having emergency eye wash and shower equipment. Um, some of the other things, portable fire extinguishers, most businesses need that. So know that one too. Lockout, tagout is very important if you are working with, machinery, equipment, and things like that that are hazardous to employees. If you guys are cleaning them, you're repairing them, servicing them, you want to make sure that that energy is uh, not, or sorry, that machine is de-energized and can't potentially turn on, or something could drop down to injure an employee. Respiratory protection is also a big requirement when it comes to, making sure that you're doing fit testing, medical evaluations, employees are using the right type of masks, as well as we got silica is number 9 here. So reporting serious injuries and fatalities, this is number four of the top 10 most cited standards in 2024, and results in a, across the board $5,000 penalty. So the requirement is that employers must contact the nearest Cal OSHA office immediately when a illness or a fatality has occurred. Immediately means as soon as practically possible, but no later than 8 hours after you know or should have known of the incident. It applies 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So if you find out on a Saturday that your employee has been, hospitalized for anything other than a observation or sorry for other than observation, and then the next slide explains that further. um, if you find out on Saturday, you need to notify them within the next 8 hours, either by phone or on their website. um, Only the employee of the injured worker may report, so notification by police, EMS, or another employee does not meet this requirement. Oftentimes, if you are calling 911, um, EMS or the fire department or the police may contact Cal OSHA. They may inform you that they contacted Cal OSHA. That does not stop the need for you to also contact Cal OSHA. Note that first responders are responsible for reporting workplace incidents to Cal OSHA. Oftentimes, if they are called out to a business, they report it to Cal OSHA no matter what. And Cal OSHA may or may not decide to come to your business depending on the injury. So you want to make sure that if it falls under the definition of a serious injury, that you are following that you are also reporting as well. So, serious injury or illness, it means any injury or illness occurring within your employment or in connection with employment that requires inpatient hospitalization for other than medical observation or diagnostic testing. Um, it also applies when somebody has an amputation, a loss of an eye, a serious degree of permanent disfigurement. Does not include anything that happens on a public street or highway unless it was in a construction zone. So it used to be that it was a 24-hour if the employee was in longer than 24 hours in the hospital. Um, that's no longer the case. They changed that back in 2020, and it is very different from the federal OSHA standards. So it does not matter for how long the employee was hospitalized as an inpatient. It just matters that they were. So it could have just been, from nighttime, and then they were discharged in the morning. So you want to make sure that if that is the case, that you're reporting it. So resources and support. So you have support from safety professionals. So you have Cal OSHA consultation, like I touched on earlier. It is free. It's completely confidential. You also have help from insurance carrier loss control, as well as me here. You guys should have my contact information will be at the end of this. Reputable resources for guidance and written programs. Cal OSHA has some really great publications out. They have written program templates, they have guides on how to use them. They have trainings. They have lots of information that's really great. Your insurance carrier may also have some really good safety resources like trainings and different things that you could provide to your employees. State Fund has a public website that all employers can find, and this is really great because they put out Cal OSHA's or California specific safety content. So it might be a bit more specific than some of the carrier resources if those aren't specifically for California. We have the Levitt Risk Management Center, which is a online safety platform that has trainings, templates, safety posters, presentations, you name it. If you're interested in it, please let us know. Email rac@levitt.com for access. Some other organizations are NIOSH, the ASSP, so American Society of Safety Professionals, American Industrial Hygiene Association. CPWR is great if you're in construction, the National Safety Council, and UC Berkeley also have some really great job hazard analyses, sorry. Um, Written program templates. If you're using a written program template, I would start with looking at some of those Cal OSHA model programs. They have them for most of the required topics. If something's not available or not a good fit, look at carrier resources, look at the RMC. Just make sure that it is made for Cal OSHA versus OSHA, or if it is OSHA, that you're making sure and going through the Cal OSHA regulation and making sure it's checking all of those boxes. Um, they really need to be carefully reviewed and customized to your business. If it says on paper that you're doing it and then you're not doing it, that could put you in some hot water. Don't rely on templates to meet compliance. Make sure you're reading the regulations and additional information to make sure that you're doing that. Involve outside support and legal counsel when necessary, and make sure that you're actually implementing on the program into your business. It's not just there to collect dust. It's there to actually follow those procedures and really, integrating them into your business practices. Okay, and we have about 11 minutes, and I could probably stay on a little bit more if the settings work. But thank you so much. If you want a copy of the slides or access to the RMC, please email rac@levitt.com. And for safety support, please email me at daniellechepka@levitt.com. All right, Rob, and go ahead
I
with
got a couple
first
of
question.
questions. The first one is what happens if an employee gets injured in the parking lot before clocking in for work? Seems like that's a little bit of a work comp question.
It is a bit of a work comp question, and that one, it kind of just depends. I mean, is the parking lot in really bad condition, and you own the parking lot, or you're responsible for making sure it's in good condition? It's very possible that, if somebody were to be seriously injured, it could be related to work, but it's that one's not really a question. That it's probably more of a case by case
Mhm.
scenario.
Our second question is California Proposition 65 new decal law, what and how?
Ooh, that one I'm not 100% sure on. So if you want to send me an email, I can look into that a bit further and we can kind of talk about what's required.
Sounds good. Okay, we have the next question is, can you explain some of the smoke hazard requirements?
Yes, so the wildfire smoke regulation. That one is required. So it's one of those requirements that it's only required when there's smoke present, right? So you probably want to be prepared for it and have a written program and some procedures ready to go. Um, but until it happens, it's not really in force. But it's mainly being aware of the air quality in your area or in the area that your employers are working. So making sure to check things like Air Now, the weather app, and once that air quality index is over 150, that's when the standard is triggered. And that means that maybe you are kind of cutting hours shorter, you are providing N95 masks to your employees if they need to be working outdoors. And when the air quality is really, really bad and it gets like 200, 250, and it's, hazardous to help, you guys are stopping operations, when necessary as well. So there is a really great written program on the state fund website on Safe at Work California that really kind of breaks down all those different requirements. But also, like, if you have any questions, we could meet over Zoom or even talk over the phone for 15, 20 minutes and go through that as well.
All right, any more questions? Danielle, I don't see any more questions coming in. I would like to thank everybody for attending our first RAC Risk and Claims Team educational series. But if you guys have any questions at all in the future, please feel free to email Danielle at rac@levitt.com and she'd be able to answer those for you right away.
Okay, thank you so much everyone who joined today. We really appreciate you taking the time to learn more about this. Again, I'm a resource for you if you have any questions. And yeah, again, thank you. Have a good rest of your day.